Hello students, we are into lecture number 36 and in today's class we shall discuss about LC oscillators. There are three oscillators to be studied here. One is Colpitts oscillator, the second one is Hartley oscillator and the third one is Clebsch oscillator. So far we have discussed about oscillators and we know that the oscillators can be classified as RC oscillators, LC oscillators and crystal oscillators. So oscillators can be classified as based upon the components used as RC oscillators, LC oscillators and crystal oscillators. And in the last two lectures we have extensively studied the RC phase shift oscillator and Weinberg oscillator, and we have also derived the frequency of oscillations, and we also understood what should be the gain of an amplifier to have sustained amplification. Fine. So today we shall discuss about the LC oscillators. Now before that we need to understand what are LC oscillators. So the oscillators which use the elements L and C to produce the oscillations are called LC oscillators. The circuit using elements L and C is called a tank circuit or oscillatory circuit. Now this is the important part of LC oscillators. The circuit is also referred to as resonating circuit or tuned circuit. Now the oscillators, particularly these LC oscillators, they are used for high frequency range from 200 kHz to few gigahertz. So this is the frequency range which can be produced by LC oscillators. And due to this high frequency range, these oscillators are often used for sources of radio frequency energy. Now let us study the basic action of LC tank circuit first. So now we shall discuss about the operation of LC tank circuit and how that particular tank circuit is used in actual oscillator circuits. Fine. So this is simply a tank circuit. So as we have said, this LC tank circuit, it consists of elements L and C connected in parallel. Okay, let me draw this figure. So we have this capacitor and this is the inductor. So this is denoted as C and this is denoted as L. So this is LC tank circuit. Now let us consider that this particular capacitor is initially charged from DC source with the polarities as shown in this figure. So here is this capacitor and this capacitor is applied a DC source having the polarity plus and minus across this capacitor. So when the capacitor gets charged, the energy gets stored in this capacitor is referred to as electrostatic energy. So this energy is referred to as electrostatic energy. So when such a charged capacitor is connected across the inductor, it forms a tank circuit, and then this capacitor starts discharging through L. Let me draw the diagram for this. So we have a capacitor which has been connected across the DC source to get this charge polarities. Fine, and then we have inductor connected across this capacitor. So as we have discussed, whenever this charge capacitor is connected across an inductor L in a tank circuit, the capacitor starts discharging through L. This arrow indicates the direction of flow of conventional current. So let me write here, this is conventional direction flow of current. Due to such a current flow, the magnetic field gets set up around the inductor L. So this is how a magnetic field is going to get set up across this inductor. Upward direction. Now the inductor starts storing the energy, and when the capacitor is fully discharged, the maximum current flows through the circuit. At this instant, all the electrostatic energy gets stored as a magnetic energy in the inductor. As we have said in the previous slide, the energy stored by the capacitor is referred to as electrostatic energy. Fine. Now, when this circuit is properly connected, this capacitor will discharge and maximum current is going to flow through this circuit. At this instant, all the electrostatic energy gets stored as a magnetic energy in the inductor L. So from electrostatic energy, we're going to have a kind of magnetic energy. Now the magnetic field around L starts collapsing. So again, let me draw the figure. So as I said, this electrostatic energy is converted to magnetic energy, which is stored across this inductor. Now this magnetic field around L starts collapsing, and as per Lenz's law, this starts charging the capacitor with opposite polarity. Okay, so this makes the lower plate positive, lower plate of the capacitor as positive, but this is how the current is flowing, and this top plate becomes negative. Fine. After some time, the capacitor gets fully charged with opposite polarities compared to its initial polarity. So again, let me represent this by a circuit: capacitor, inductor, and here on the top plate we have negative charge, and here we are having positive charge. So this is capacitor and here is the inductor. So the entire magnetic energy gets converted back to electrostatic energy in the capacitor. Now this capacitor again starts discharging through inductor L, but now the direction of current through this circuit is opposite to the direction of current we have discussed earlier in the circuit. So now this will be the direction of flow of current. So again, the electrostatic energy is converted to magnetic energy, and when capacitor is fully discharged, the magnetic field starts collapsing, charging the capacitor again in opposite direction. Thus, the capacitor charges with alternate polarities and discharges, producing alternating current in the tank circuit. This is nothing but oscillatory current, but every time when energy is transferred from C to L and L to C, the losses occur due to which amplitude of the oscillating current keeps on decreasing every time when energy transfer takes place. Here the two energies are electrostatic energy and magnetic energy, and hence actually we get exponentially decaying oscillations called damped oscillations. So if I simply talk about these oscillations, okay, so I'm going to get this kind of output. So you see they are dying with respect to time, they are exponentially decaying. So this is maximum current, and here this is a maximum current in the negative direction. So you see the signal is exponentially decaying. Now in LC oscillators, the transistor amplifier supplies this loss of energy at proper times. So the care of proper polarity is taken by the feedback network. Thus the LC tank circuit along with the transistor amplifier can be used to obtain the oscillators called LC oscillators. Due to supply of energy which is lost, the oscillations get maintained and hence called sustained oscillations or undamped oscillation. The frequency of oscillations generated by LC tank circuit depends on the value of L and C and is given as F equals to 1 upon 2 pi under root LC Hertz, where L is in Henrys and C is in farads. So depending upon the type of tank circuit used, the LC oscillators are classified as Colpitts oscillator. So there is a basic form of LC oscillator circuits. Let us try to understand it. Basic form of LC oscillator circuit. So we have an amplifier, fine, and the output of which needs to be connected back to the input. Now here it has this kind of a structure. So we have, this is a tank circuit, and as per our discussion, if I simply use the tank circuit, the signal is exponentially decaying. So I need to have an amplifier which would replenish the signal, the loss in the signal, and I'm going to get a sustained oscillations. Now here I'm just expressing it in terms of impedances. Now in case of a Colpitts oscillator, in place of Z1 and Z3 we are going to use a capacitor, and Z3, let me mark this as Z2. So Z1 and Z3 will be capacitors and Z3 will be inductor in case of Colpitts oscillator, and in case of Hartley oscillator this Z1 and Z3 will be inductors and Z2 will be a capacitor. Now there is another variation to this which is known as Clapeyron oscillator that we will discuss little later. Now the amplifier output fits the network consisting of impedances Z1, Z2 and Z3, fine, and this is the active device. Here in this course, electronic devices and circuit, we are going to use a transistor as an amplifier, but this particular circuit can be realized using op-amp or FET circuit, fine. So the methodology will be, we are going to derive a generalized expression in terms of Z1, Z2 and Z3, fine, and then depending upon the choice of oscillators, maybe it's a Colpitts oscillator or Hartley oscillator, we are going to substitute the equivalent impedance in place of Z1, Z2 and Z3. Let me repeat again, this is the structure of a basic form of oscillator. As I've said, in case of Colpitts oscillator, this Z1 and Z3 will be capacitor, Z2 will be inductor. In case of Hartley, Z1 and Z3 are inductors and Z2 is capacitor. So we are going to find a generalized expression in terms of Z1, Z2 and Z3, and in the final expression we are going to substitute the impedance of inductor and capacitor in that expression, and we are going to obtain the frequency of oscillations. Fine. So here is the circuit diagram for Colpitts oscillator. As we have discussed in the previous slide, this is the basic form. We have the amplifier. Now if you correlate to this particular circuit, here what you see, this stage is a single stage amplifier, okay, and here this Z1, Z2, Z3 is a LC tank circuit. So here this is LC tank circuit, and depending upon the impedance we chose, as I said, this Z1, Z2, Z3 can be inductor or capacitor, and if I use capacitors in place of Z1 and Z3 and inductor over here, this circuit is then referred to as Colpitts oscillator. Now here this is a very stable circuit and is widely used in commercial signal generators to generate a signal of or up to 100 megahertz. So you can get an output up to 100 megahertz, whereas if you recollect, in case of RC Wein bridge oscillator, the maximum stable output that could be generated was just 1 megahertz. Now here this is the basic circuit of transistorized Colpitts oscillator. As I have said, this amplifier can be realized using FET circuit, FET amplifier or operational amplifier. So it basically consists of, now let us discuss about the construction. So it consists of a single stage inverting amplifier, and what we mean by inverting amplifier, if I have this as a fictitious signal, okay, at the base terminal, then you see this transistor is connected in common emitter configuration, and to begin with, common emitter configuration has got a very high gain, so we can use a kind of a feedback mechanism that we have discussed in negative feedback amplifiers, whereas here, as I said, like it is inverting amplifier, that means the output which is generated across the collector will be out of phase with respect to your input signal. So during the first half, here this is positive, whereas at the output across the collector during the first half the signal is negative. So this is what is referred to as 180 degree phase shift, also referred to as out of phase, also referred to as inverting amplifier. So this is common emitter circuit, and it is only in case of common emitter circuit we get this phase reversal of 180 degrees. And here we have a LC phase shift network. Fine, this is what we have discussed in the previous slide. Now the two series capacitors C1 and C2, it forms the potential divider used for providing the feedback voltage. In fact, the voltage which is produced across C2 provides the regenerative feedback required for sustained oscillation. As we have discussed, if I simply use the tank circuit, fine, the energy get transferred from electrostatic energy to magnetic energy, and then there is some kind of a loss in the signal, and if I plot the current, then I'm going to get exponentially decaying signal. Fine, so I have to overcome those losses, and those losses can be overcome using an amplifier circuit. And only when we have a combination of amplifier, that is a single stage amplifier, and a tank circuit. So here is the tank circuit and here is your amplifier, then only we are going to get the sustained oscillations. Okay, let us discuss something about this amplifier. The parallel combination of RE and CE along with R1 and R2, it provides the stabilized self bias. So let me write here R1, R2 and RE and CE. Okay, it provides a stabilized self bias. The collector supply voltage is VCC, which is applied to the collector through a radio frequency choke. So here I have mentioned RFC. RFC stands for radio frequency choke. Now, what is the use of this particular RFC in this circuit? This RFC which permits an easy flow of direct current, but at the same time it offers a very high impedance to the high frequency currents. Fine. The presence of a coupling capacitor CC2 here in the output circuit does not permit the DC current to go to the tank circuit. And what can be the source of DC current? It is this DC supply. Fine. So the capacitor blocks the DC voltage. Why it blocks the DC voltage? The reactance of capacitor is given as Xc equals to 1 upon 2 pi Fc, where Xc is the reactance. It is as good as the resistance offered by the capacitor. So it is a function of frequency and the capacitance value. So in case of a direct signal, the frequency component is 0, so the reactance will be infinity. So that means for DC current, this particular capacitor is going to offer a very high resistance. So it's going to block the DC current. Fine. So the moment I connect a CC2 here, it will not allow or it will not permit the DC currents to go to the tank circuit. If I don't connect this capacitor, naturally the DC current will affect this tank circuit, and it will reduce its Q factor, that is quality factor, that we'll discuss later. Okay, so if by somehow if there is some DC current into the tank circuit, it affects the Q factor. Now the radio frequency energy that is developed across the RFC is capacitively coupled to the tank circuit. We have studied the coupling. So here it is capacitive coupling. In between the output which is generated across the collector needs to be connected to the or fed to the tank circuit. So the joining link here is the capacitor. So it is a capacitive coupling, okay, through the capacitor CC2. The output of phase shift LC network is coupled from the junction of L and C2 to the amplifier. The output of the phase shift LC network, okay, this is the LC network, is coupled from the junction of L and C2, okay, here this junction L and C2, and it is connected to the input of the amplifier, meaning it is connected at the base through this coupling capacitor CC1. So again this coupling capacitor CC1 is going to block the DC, but it will allow the AC signal from this tank circuit to be connected to the base. The transistor itself produces a phase shift of 180 degrees. We have studied that in case of oscillators, fine, this is the amplifier, output is connected back, so we don't have any input signal as such. the feedback voltage acts as the input here. So both have to be in phase. So if I use common emitter circuit here, this output at this particular point will be out of phase by 180 degrees. See, first half it is positive, first half this is negative. The same signal is going to travel down this wire, okay, and what I want, this is the output of the feedback network. Fine. So the frequency along this loop has to remain the same, has to remain the constant, but look at the magnitude. This is less as compared to the output voltage, and that is controlled by the gain of the feedback network. But most important is the incoming signal should be equal to the fictitious value of Vi. So then only we have a regenerative or positive feedback. So you see here 180 degree phase shift is provided by amplifier, and again I need to have a phase reversal between these 2 points. So I need to have 180 phase shift to be provided by this block. So total phase shift should be 360 degrees or 0 degrees. That was the first criteria of Barkhausen. The second criteria is AB has to be equal to 1. Fine. So the transistor itself, okay, in this particular circuit produces a phase shift of 180 degrees, and another phase shift of 180 degrees is provided by the capacitive feedback. Thus a total phase shift of 360 is obtained, which is essential condition for developing oscillations as laid by Barkhausen's criteria. The output voltage is derived from the secondary winding L prime coupled to the inductance L. So there is a coupling here, inductive coupling. The frequency is determined by the tank circuit and is varied by gang tuning the two capacitors. Now if you see, the frequency of oscillations is purely a function of C1, C2 and L, which is decided by the circuit components of the tank circuit. This has no role to play as far as the frequency of oscillation is concerned. So we can say that the frequency is determined by the tank circuit and is varied by gang tuning the two capacitors. Now here if I want to change the frequency F, fine, the variables are L, C1 and C2. So if I am able to change the value of C1 and C2, I can change or vary the frequency F. Now how it is done? Now we connect these two capacitors together, okay, and by changing this slider, the value of C1 and C2 is changed simultaneously. So this is what is referred to as gang tuning. The same thing is employed for the RC phase shift oscillator. If we make use of 3 RC section, then those 3 capacitors are gang tuned. So I don't have to individually change the value of C1 and C2 separately. In fact, there is a single mechanism, a gang tuning. By just tuning it, I can change the frequency of collective frequency of the tanks or the Colpitts oscillator. So it is to be noted that the capacitors C1 and C2 are ganged. Fine. So as the tuning is varied, why we need to do the tuning? Tuning in simple words meaning changing the value of F, that is frequency. So as the tuning is varied, values of both capacitors vary simultaneously and the ratio of two capacitances remains the same. Fine. So this was all about the construction. Now let us try to understand the working of it. So when the collector supply voltage VCC is switched on, the capacitors C1 and C2 are charged. This capacitor C1 and C2 discharges through the coil L. This concept we have discussed in the very second slide. Fine. So this will set up the oscillations of frequency F equals to 1 upon 2 pi under root 1 upon LC1 plus 1 upon LC2. We have to derive this equation. Now the oscillations across capacitor C2, so the oscillations across capacitor C2 are applied to the base emitter junction and appear in the amplified form in the collector circuit. So the voltage across this capacitor C2, fine, this is with respect to ground, so this voltage will appear across the base, fine, and this signal will be amplified, and the amplified signal will be available at the collector. And of course the amplified output in the collector circuit is of the same frequency as that of the oscillatory circuit. The frequency of all these signals has to remain the same. Now this amplified output in the collector circuit is supplied to the tank circuit. So you see the amplified output at the collector terminal is again connected to this tank circuit or supplied to tank circuit in order to meet the losses. And what are the losses? There is energy conversion from electrostatic energy to magnetic energy and vice versa, because the direction of current is going to get reversed. So this losses needs to be compensated, and these losses are compensated by this amplifier. So this is the tank circuit and here is the amplifier. So thus the tank circuit is getting a continuously energy from the circuit to make up for the losses occurring in it, and therefore it ensures undamped oscillations. Fine. So whatever the losses which are occurring here on account of transfer of energy from electrostatic to magnetic, fine, those losses are compensated by the output from this amplifier, and thereby we are going to have undamped oscillations. So we are going to have the output of constant frequency and constant amplitude, and the frequency of operation is given by this expression which we are going to derive shortly. And you see this frequency is purely a function of inductor C1 and C2. These are the three components. It does not depend on any of oscillations. This is the second part, frequency of oscillations. So right in the beginning I have said we are going to derive a general theory in terms of Z1, Z2 and Z3, and then using the generalized expressions in that equation we are going to substitute Z1 and Z3 as capacitor and Z2 as inductor for Colpitz's oscillator. Fine. So we are going to follow that particular approach here. So let us obtain a generalized expression. So for that we need to draw the equivalent circuit with the following assumptions, and the assumptions are the first assumption is that the HRE of a transistor is negligible. It is of the order of 10 to the power minus 4, so it's very small voltage when you multiply with the VCE. If we recollect the transistor model, we have HIE, okay, and here we have the voltage source which is given as HRE into VCE, current gain HFE, and this is HFE IB, and this is 1 by HOE. This is the complete hybrid model. So here in this analysis we are going to take the approximate path. The value of HRE is 10 to the power minus 4, and typically this VCE is the output voltage which is of the order 5 to 6 volt. So the product happens to be very small. So HRE of transistor is negligibly small, and therefore we can neglect the product of HRE and V out, and instead of this we are going to use a short. Fine. And secondly, the value of HOE is typically 10 to the power minus 6, is very small. That means this is the admittance, so 1 upon HOE is the resistance will be, if this is 10 to the power minus 6, then 1 by HOE will be 10 to the power 6. so which is very large, so there is no chance of having current conduction through this path, because 1 by HO is a very high value of resistance. So current will always prefer to travel through a path which offers a less resistance. So again, this has no role to play, so we can neglect HRE view out, and this is again HOE part, that is 1 by HOE is omitted from the circuit. Fine. So these are the two assumptions, and with this assumption let us draw the equivalent diagram. For equivalent diagram, let us mark this as Z3, Z1 and Z2. Okay, so first of all, the transistor will be replaced with its approximate hybrid model HIE, and here this is constant current source HFE IB. Emitter is connected to ground. Okay, try to understand this. Emitter is connected to ground, and when we draw the AC equivalent circuit, all the DC voltages are connected to ground and all the capacitors are shorted. Fine. So this CC2 and CC1 will not appear into picture, but then we are carrying out the analysis here, so we have to retain C1 and C2. So instead of C1 and C2, we are using the terms Z1, Z2 and Z3, so that we get a generalized expression. Fine. So you see, this is connected to ground, so at one end we are having Z1 and the other end we are having Z2. So I can have Z2 here, fine, and Z1 here. So in between we have the ground connection. Try to understand this. And we have a Z3 which is connected across Z1 and Z2 from here. Fine. So we are going to have Z3 here. Okay. Now let me complete this circuit. So this is the top part is the amplifier, and this is the tank circuit. So instead of using capacitors, two capacitors and inductor, I am using Z1, Z2 and Z3 as the impedances. Fine. And we are going to derive an expression in terms of this Z1, Z2 and Z3. Fine. So this is the base, this is the collector, this is emitter terminal. Current passing through this is, the notations are very important. Current, so this is I1, so the same current is going to travel through this wire. So HFE into IB is IC. So we'll mark this point as 2, this point as 1 and this point as 3. Okay, so 1, 2 and 3. So now let us determine the load impedance between the output terminals 1 and 2. First let us determine the load impedance between 1 and 2. Now here you see Z2 and HIE are in parallel. How can we make out it is in parallel? Because there is a division of current. Fine. So Z2 and HIE are parallel and the resultant impedance is in series with Z3. Try to understand this. Z2 and HIE, okay, they are in parallel. If I take this resistor and draw here, you can easily visualize this Z2 is parallel with HIE, and the combination of two, the equivalent value of 2 is in series with Z3. Fine. So the equivalent impedance is in parallel with impedance Z1. So Z2 and HIE are in parallel, which is in series with Z3, which is in parallel with Z1. So now our objective is to find out the impedance here. Fine. So the load impedance between the output terminals is given as ZL. Try to understand this. Z1 in parallel with series combination of Z3 plus parallel combination of Z2 and HIE. I hope this is clear. Z2 and HIE are in parallel. They are going to have equivalent value which is in series with Z3. So when I calculate, I am going to get some value which is in parallel with Z1. And now our task is to find the load impedance across 1 and 2. So this is clear, I guess. So now let us simplify this. Z1 in parallel with Z3, Z2 into HIE, R1 in parallel with R2 is R1 R2 upon R1 plus R2. So Z2 plus HIE plus Z2 Z3, or we can write ZL as Z1 in bracket HIE into Z2 plus Z3 plus Z2 Z3, close the bracket, upon HIE into Z1 plus Z2 plus Z3 plus Z1 Z2 plus Z2 Z3. Now the voltage gain of a CE amplifier, voltage gain of CE amplifier without feedback is given as A equals to minus HFE ZL upon HIE. So the output voltage between the terminals 1 and 2, between the terminals 1 and 2 is given as V out equals to Z3 plus Z2 into HIE, Z2 plus HIE into upon Z2 plus HIE into I1. So feedback fraction, which is given as beta equals to VF by V out, will be equal to Z2 into HIE divided by HIE into Z2 plus Z3 plus Z2 Z3. Fine. And applying the criteria of oscillations, so the applying criteria of oscillations, that is AB equals to 1, okay, we have minus of HFE into ZL by HIE. So this is here the value of gain A without feedback, and now what we want is the value of feedback, that is beta, and we have calculated it to be as VF by V out with this expression. Fine. So this is the value of beta. So we can write Z2 into HIE divided by HIE Z2 plus Z3 plus Z2 Z3, which equals to 1. Or further simplifying this, we can write it as HFE into Z1 into HIE Z2 plus Z3 plus Z2 Z3, close the bracket, and here it is HIE Z1 plus Z2 plus Z3 plus Z1 Z2 plus Z2 Z3 into here we have obtained the value of ZL. Fine. ZL was the resistance impedance across the terminals 1 and 2. Fine. So our entire exercise was first to calculate the value of ZL. Fine. So this is the first thing we have calculated, then this is the second thing, and this was the third expression. Okay, and now we are equating AB equals to 1. So this is the value of A. In A we have the ZL term, so this ZL is the expression 2. Okay, and this carried forward as it is, plus Z1 Z2 plus Z2 Z3 equals to minus 1, or HIE Z1 Z2 plus Z3 plus Z1 Z2 plus Z2 Z3 equals to minus HFE Z1 Z2, which can be further simplified as which can be written as HIE into Z1 plus Z2 plus Z3 plus Z1 Z2 1 plus HFE plus Z2 Z3 equals to 0. Now this is the all important equation. Actually the derivation that we have done is not important from the syllabus point of view, because what we need to do is, if a frequency of oscillation is asked, say for Colpitz's oscillator, then we actually have to start with this particular generalized expression, and then we have to substitute the value of Z1, Z2 and Z3 and find the value of frequency of oscillation. But for you all to understand how we arrive at this particular equation, that is the generalized equation, let me write here. This is the general equation of the oscillator. Fine. So if in the exam, if it is asked, find the frequency of oscillations of a Colpitts oscillator, or for that matter a Hartley oscillator, you start with this particular expression, and before that the circuit diagram is important, the equivalent circuit is important, and then you start with this expression. This is the beginning point, and again we have some more steps to follow. I hope this is clear. Now in case of Colpitts oscillator, right in the beginning we have said Z1 is capacitor, Z2 is capacitor and Z3 is inductor. Fine. And we have derived the expression in general terms in terms of the impedance Z1, Z2 and Z3. Now for Colpitts oscillator, we have to substitute the impedance value of Z1, and what is it? Z1 is capacitor, so the value of capacitor will be impedance. In terms of impedance, it will be 1 upon j omega C1. Fine. So this will be 1 upon j omega C1. this will be 1 upon j omega C2, and here this impedance will be simply J3 equals to j omega L. Okay, now if we are going to use this notation, so impedance Z1 is 1 upon j omega C1, which can be written as minus of j upon omega C1. Okay, Z2 is 1 upon j omega C2, which again can be written as minus of j upon omega C2, and Z3 is j omega L. Now what we need to do is we have to substitute this Z1, Z2 and Z3 in this general equation. Followed, if the question is asked, derive the frequency of oscillation for Colpitz's oscillator, draw the circuit diagram, explain the construction, explain the working in brief, and then you start. This is the general equation for the oscillator, and then you substitute Z1 equal to this value, Z2 is this, and Z3 equal to j omega L. So if I substitute these terms in this expression, what I get is HIE into minus j omega C1 minus j omega C2 plus j omega L. How did I get this? The expression says the generalized HIE into Z1 plus Z2 plus Z3. So I have to just add up Z1, Z2 and Z3. So once this is done, the second part, plus minus j upon omega C1 and minus j upon omega C2 into 1 plus HFE. Here the second term is Z1, Z2, the product of Z1 and Z2 into 1 plus HF, and third Z2 into Z3. So multiply these two terms, Z2 and Z3. Multiply in the sense you have to write down here, plus minus of j WC2 into j omega L equals to 0. C2 minus omega L equals to 0, or I can write this as 1 upon omega C1 plus 1 upon omega C2 equals to omega L. Go to the next slide. Further simplifying this, we can write this as C1 plus C2 divided by omega C1 C2 equals to omega L. So you have not skipped even a single step here, so that you can understand how we arrive at the frequency of oscillations. There is nothing to by heart. Try to understand. C1 plus C2 L C1 plus C2, which equals to under root 1 upon LC1 plus 1 upon LC2, and we know omega is 2 pi f, and what we are interested in finding is frequency, which equals to 1 upon 2 pi under root 1 upon LC1 plus 1 upon LC2. So this is the frequency of oscillations for Colpitz's oscillator. Okay, so okay, which real component? From here, this expression. Okay, this was the imaginary component. Okay, and here what you have are all the real terms or real components. Okay, equating this to 0, I should get possibly the gain. Okay, let us see what we get. So equating the real components to 0, 1 plus HFE upon omega square C1 C2 equals to L by C2. Again simplifying this, 1 plus HFE equals to omega square C2 gets cancelled, L into C1. And I'll write since omega square equal to C1 plus C2 upon L C1 C2. How did I get this? From this expression. Fine. Here. So we can write this as 1 plus HFE equals to C1 plus C2 upon L C1 C2 into L C1, which equals to C1 plus C2 upon C2, or 1 plus C1 by C2, or HFE is C1 by C2. Fine. So as for the oscillators, the loop gain must be greater than unity to ensure that the circuit oscillate. Barkhaussen's criteria, just recollect. The first criteria was we have to have 360-degree phase shift, that is 0-degree phase shift, out of which one it is provided by the transistor, another one it is provided by the tank circuit. That condition is satisfied. The second condition is the product of AB has to be equal to 1. Okay, and beta is as good as the HFE value, the gain, the current gain. So I can write AB has to be greater than or equal to 1, or A should be less than or greater to equal to 1 by B, and this beta value we have calculated it as C1 by C2, so it is C2 by C1. Fine. So A has to be greater or equal to C2 by C1. And what is C1, C2 are the components, that is capacitors, which are used in the tank circuit. So here is the problem statement. In a transistorized Colpitts oscillator, L equals to 100 microhenry, the L RFC, that is the radio frequency choke, equals to 0.6 millihenry, C1 equals to 0.001 microfarad, C2 is 0.01 microfarad, the coupling capacity CC is 10 microfarad. Determine the first sub question operating frequency, second sub question feedback fraction, the third sub question minimum gain to sustain oscillation, and finally the emitter resistance if RC equals to 2.5 kilo ohms. So always you start with a given data first. So what is given? Inductance, okay, L equals to 100 microhenry, that is 100 into micro is 10 to the power minus 6, or we can say this is 10 to the power 2, so it is, or 1 into 10 to the power minus 4. We have to express it in terms of henries. Fine. So this conversion is important. Then the capacitance has to be expressed in terms of farads. So C1 equals to 0.0001 microfarad equals to 0.0001 into 10 to the minus 6, 10 to the power minus 6 farads. Similarly, capacitance C2 equals to 0.01 microfarad, or 0.01 into 10 to the power minus 6 farads. Okay, now let us calculate the first part, that is operating